Hello. Hello. Hi guys. Long time no see. Welcome back to Gremlin Talk. This is episode 15, I believe, of this podcast. I am not going to lie to you. I did film half of episode 15 4 weeks ago when I was supposed to post episode 15. And then, some stuff kind of went down and I got freaked out and I got really busy because I was leaving to go back to Los Angeles. And these are all excuses. Let me just say, these are all excuses and I'm hearing myself say them. But I got busy and then I went to Europe and I couldn't find anywhere to record when I was in Europe. And I'd rather be able to sit and actually process things through the podcast versus rushing to complete it and it being a product that I'm not really proud of. So I kind of went on a little podcast vacation, some may say. Honestly, I'm not making money off this podcast. I would love to figure out how to monetize it sooner rather than later, but right now it's kind of just a labor of love, which means I don't feel particularly obligated, I guess. Like, I know you guys really like it, and I've gotten a lot of DMs from people saying, where is the next podcast episode? I run to your voice every week and you're not here, and it's stressful for me. And you know what? I get it. And also I just love the audacity of this podcast fulfills me, and you better produce it. So here I am, guys. It's been a very stressful 4 weeks of my life, and there's a lot of content to recap. I'm going to start this by saying hello. If you're watching on the YouTube, I'm recording this as a video podcast as well, and I will be posting it on YouTube because honestly, I need the monetization minutes, and if I'm going to produce content on this kind of level, then it should be cross-platformed. It should be. So there is also a video podcast on my own YouTube channel, Max Shea Smith, if you want to watch the video unedited, I cannot speak today, unedited, I said it right the first time, but it just sounded very wrong, version of this podcast. So feel free to go check that out. It will be posting tonight as well. So today's Wednesday, and I have been putting off recording this podcast for a minute, and that is because it got to the point where there was so much content to talk about that, frankly, I just got overwhelmed. Like, let's do a short little outline of the things we're going to talk about today. So first and foremost, I owe you guys an explanation as to what happened with the Hawaii boy. 2, I owe you guys an explanation as to me quitting my job. Like, it's crazy to me that I haven't even talked about this on the podcast yet because it's been so monumental for me. 3rd, I need to talk about going back to Los Angeles for a couple days, what happened when I was in LA. I need to talk about going to Europe and my Europe trip and my failed Tour du Mont Blanc attempt. There's a lot of things here that need to be discussed. And I have been struggling with how to produce this episode, like how to create a structure to this episode so that it makes sense because there's so many moving parts. But that is my job as a professional storyteller now after quitting my engineering job. So first, before we even jump into the outline, I should probably talk about where I am now. If you are on the YouTube channel, you see this little divot in the wall behind me. That is a dent in the wall from kneeing the wall when I was like 12. So, listeners, I am in my childhood bedroom. Welcome to Gilbert, Arizona. I'm in my mother's house, and I never, ever, ever expected my year to lead me to being in Gilbert. That wasn't really on the plan. That wasn't really on the schedule. So it feels a little odd to be sitting in my childhood bedroom, but I am enjoying being home. Today is my 3rd day in Gilbert in my mom's house, and it's been very relaxing. I've been able to get a lot of running done. I'm getting bored and antsy, but we will talk about this at the end of the episode. But yeah, that is where I am coming at you from today. I am no longer on my balcony in Hawaii. I am not speaking to you through an iPhone microphone from the Colorado Trail. I am sitting here with a microphone in my childhood bedroom. So let us continue. Oh, I feel like I need to kind of hot in here. I mean, it is like 90 degrees outside, so that makes sense. Okay, where do we begin? Wow, there's so many fun topics to cover. I guess we will just start right off the bat with Hawaii Boy. And you know what? I am terrified that he is going to listen to this because he has no social media, but he did express interest in hearing my podcast, which I would literally rather eat glass. I would rather get hit by my own car than have this man listen to my podcast. Like any man I've ever had interested in ever, I'm like, please have no social media. Please do not listen to my podcast. Please do not look on my YouTube channel. Like, I think it's so cringy for a man that I'm interested in romantically to be interested in my social media. So, okay, we're just gonna start. So, you may or may not have listened to the last episode of Gremlin Talk, and that was episode, I think, 14. I believe this is episode 15, which, by the way, crazy. We have covered like 20 plus weeks of my life. Like, you guys have literally seen me go from working in my lab, my 9 to 5, to now quitting my job and being a full-time content creator and doing this for a living. So that has been super odd. So last episode, I talked about how I met this guy when I was on a run, and I thought everything was just great. Like, obviously it was early days, but there were a lot of green flags. He was very secure, just a good communicator. Like, he literally asked me how to meet my needs, and like, there were just so many things. I was like, oh wow, like this guy seems really mature and really evolved for a man. And I mean, he was like 30, so you would think that with time these boys would evolve and adapt. And I have mixed feelings on what was really going on with this guy. But so I go on a couple dates with him, and him and I have the conversation about like intimacy is terrifying for me. Personally, I'm an anxiously attached girly, as I mentioned in the last episode, which means I crave intimacy, but also I'm not emotionally available because I look to protect myself, and I get really anxious in romantic relationships, and I require a lot of security. But at the same time, I go for guys who I know absolutely cannot provide that. Like, every single man that I have been interested in the last 2 years has been somebody that I just know in my heart cannot provide me with any kind of stability, which is okay, because frankly, I'm not really in a phase of my life where I want to be in a relationship, or I want somebody, like, I don't need somebody dragging me down at the moment. So the fact I can just like fly to Europe and run Tour du Mont Blanc and do my own thing is very fulfilling for me. So all this in mind, I was like very impressed with this guy. I was like, wow, he seems really great. He'd gotten out of a relationship like 6 months ago or so, more than that, like a long-term relationship. So that was like a little bit of a red flag. I was like, oh, he's probably not very available. But again, it was like, doesn't really matter because I'm not sticking around, However, him and I had the conversation of celibacy. Let's call it what it is. It's celibacy. I told him I was not interested in sleeping with anybody that I didn't care about. I wasn't interested in physical intimacy. And I couldn't really put my finger on why I have felt this way, but I know it's what I have to do to protect myself. So before this whole situation with this guy, I was like, celibacy grind, like, I'm just not really interested in becoming attached to anybody, and definitely not interested in being used for sex, because that is what it has felt like the last couple of years dating men, that they only care about sleeping with me and then they leave. And it's funny because I think when you have an anxious attachment style, you kind of like, it goes one of two ways. You either date the guys who from the beginning they cannot handle emotional intimacy and they will leave, or you date the guys who love bomb you and get committed very, very quickly and then they ghost you. I haven't experienced the second kind, but I recently became aware that it exists. And I think it's very telling about me that I'm not interested in guys who love bomb me because like, I'm so grossed out when guys express interest in me, like genuine interest. So, the love bombing is not, it's not a good trait. Again, I'm telling you, I'm not health right now. I'm not health. I don't want to be in a relationship. I want to just do my own thing. So, all this in mind. Him and I have the conversation of I am fearful of physical intimacy. I'm not sleeping with anybody. I'm practicing celibacy. And he's like, yeah, that all sounds great. Like, I have no problem with that. Long story short, he ends up making a move and then stuff kind of happens, and I just can't talk about details like this on a platform like this. I just can't do it. This is not Call Her Daddy, okay? But I end up realizing that I'm not really ready to sleep with anybody. Like, I reiterated basically this situation that happens with him. I'm like, you know what? I really don't think I'm ready for physical intimacy with anybody. And next day, I tell him that. And before I even get the words out of, I'm not really cool with anything that's like happened between us. Like, I don't want to do anything more. I'm not interested. He comes with the bold, hot statement of, I either want to be friends or I want to be friends with benefits. I'm not interested in playing the innocent game. Direct quote, the innocent game. And I was like, what do you mean the innocent game? And he says, like kissing and like doing stuff like that. Like, I'm not really interested in doing that unless you intend to sleep with me because it makes me want more. Again, direct quote. And I'm like sitting on this man's kitchen floor, fucking stunned. Like, given the circumstances of what happened, which I don't even want to talk about on this podcast because, one, like, I want to protect his privacy, which I don't know why, but I just don't really feel comfortable airing these details. But I was just like, that is so hilarious that you would, like, that's really what you're going with? Friends or friends with benefits? Really? Really, guy? Okay. And I told him, like, well, I'm not interested in physical intimacy with you or anybody. Like, it's not a safe place for me. And he was like, well, if you're open to the option of it. And I was like, I'm not. Like, the fact that I had to fucking reiterate it. And then that happened like multiple more times over the course of this conversation. He kept saying like, oh, if you're open to the option. I'm like, I'm not. I'm really not though. Like, I'm not interested. So I leave his house and I'm like, I'm never speaking to this man again. Like, I'm so disgusted by his actions and his words. Like, it's so not in alignment with what I thought his character was like. So at this point that all this stuff is going down with him, I am supposed to be leaving the island in 3 days. So everything kind of went down on Saturday and I was supposed to leave on Tuesday. And as of Saturday, my plan was actually to come back to Oahu, which kind of a crazy turn of events because that wasn't the plan. Oh, the OG plan was to go back to Los Angeles, go back to my job part-time and just continue with life as normal, just go back to my job, influencer, halftime, engineer, halftime, runner, in the fraction that doesn't even exist between those. And I was going to find, an apartment in Los Angeles. Basically, over the course of my month in Hawaii, I came to the realization that I can't return back to my job. Once I got off the Colorado Trail, I thought, well, maybe I could go back to my job. It wouldn't be a big deal. And I just realized I couldn't go back to sitting in a lab. I realized that it felt like such a waste of my time to be spending 10 hours of my day indoors in Malibu and like sign a lease in Los Angeles only to have to work at my engineering job to pay for said lease. Like, none of it made sense to me. And I just wasn't really willing to do that. So I call my manager a week and a half before I'm supposed to go back to my job. right? Yeah. A week and a half for him supposed to go back. And I tell him, Casey, like, I'm so sorry, but I just don't think I can come back. And he's like, why? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, I just don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to be a part of corporate America anymore. I don't want to be an engineer. Like, everything's going well. Like, I'm making enough money on social media to not have to come back. And I would rather struggle than like live comfortably and work at this 9 to 5. And he was so incredibly understanding. I'm not kidding. Every single step of this process of taking a leave of absence from my job and traveling and being abroad and then ultimately quitting, my manager has been 100% on my side. He is basically family to me. My whole group is like family to me, but it has been such a weight off my chest to know that regardless of what I end up deciding, he's going to support me either way. And so I quit. I quit my job. I quit engineering. And how this all works is I needed to get back to Los Angeles to clear out my desk, have my last official day at work, have my exit interview, and go through all of those clerical HR steps to be separated from the company. So concurrently, as I'm quitting my job, I find out through my friend Austin. I've talked about him on this podcast before, I think. He's a YouTuber. He runs this obstacle course called the Battle Bunker was Simi Valley, but now they're in Chula Vista. And he was doing this competition with Lenny and Larry's, like partnered with Lenny and Larry's for a competition. And he told me to apply. And I find out that I was accepted for the competition. So they offer to fly me to Los Angeles. And then they also offer to fly me back to Honolulu after the competition's over. So my original plan was to fly back to LA, work part-time, whatever. And when that fell through, I guess, or became not the consequences of my decisions, I realized I could come back to Oahu and spend some more time in Oahu. And I was trying to figure out how I could do that, like where I could live to make that happen. And my friend, who I call Booty Patrol because he drives this car that says Booty Patrol on it. It literally says like Hawaii Booty Patrol, and he drives around and it's hilarious. Like, I thought it was so douchey at first, and then he is just the sweetest, kindest human being. And he literally told me his intentions with it were to make other people happy. He was like, it makes other people happy. People smile when they see it in the street, and I've seen it like light up people's faces. And I was like, that is such a pure, like, what a pure thing to have with such a weird context. So he's in the Coast Guard, which, irrelevant detail. I mean, kind of relevant because the guy I was seeing in Hawaii was also in the Coast Guard, and they actually ran into each other on the base. It was super fucking weird. But I was going to go stay with Booty Patrol. He offered to let me live with him. He was like, you can take my bedroom. I'll sleep on the couch. Like, I just would love to have somebody around. And he's such a host. Like, he's so generous and he's such a host. He just wanted to have somebody around. So he was like, Mac, like, just fly back to Honolulu. You can stay another like month or so before your 100-mile race, and then you can fly back to the mainland after that. So my plan going into this Saturday where I end things with this guy and then the competition in Los Angeles was that I was going to be coming back to Honolulu. I was coming back to Oahu. So how the fuck did I end up in Europe? literally turn of events like none other. So I'm in Oahu. I end things with this man in the Coast Guard, and it's Tuesday morning, and my flight to Los Angeles is Tuesday evening. And I am kind of thinking, now that I've ended things with this guy, I'm kind of feeling that Sagittarius urge to go somewhere else. And I always fucking do this, you guys. I always do this. Literally the second I end something with a guy, I'm like, peace, like literally booking a flight, see you later. I ended things with my situationship and I flew to Boston. I ended things with this other guy and I flew to, that was a different guy. I flew somewhere else overseas. Like, I literally, that is my MO. Like, that is what I do. When I end things with a guy, I leave. And I don't feel ashamed of it. One time I ended things with a guy and I went on a date backpacking trip in the Grand Canyon. Actually, I even had things end with the guy, and that preceded me moving into my car and this whole 4-month thing. So we can thank him for the absolute chaos that my life has become. But it's really good entertainment. So I know that y'all are appreciating it. You better. So I am thinking about where I could go instead of going back to Oahu. And my friend Val from the Colorado Trail, who I actually met because of this podcast, which is maybe the best thing ever. If you all can recall from the Colorado Trail, on day 8, I was by myself, and I had one solo day before I met Val. So I'm packing up my tent. This girl comes down the trail and she sees me and I'm like, hi. And she goes, oh my God, I know you. And I was like, okay. And keep in mind, I wouldn't say I'm used to being recognized, but like it happens more often than you would think, given I don't have that many followers in the context of the world. So I was like, okay, yeah. And she's like, I just listened to your podcast about Breckenridge. Like, I was literally listening to your podcast yesterday and I was wondering if I was going to meet you on the trail. And I'm not kidding. This girl is my fucking soulmate. She is maybe one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. She went to West Point. She served as an officer in the Army for 5 years. She went to MIT and got an MBA. I say such kind things about Val because, like, truly, she has made my life so much better by being in it. She's hilarious. I don't think I would have survived the Colorado Trail without Val. Anytime things got shitty, we just really stuck it out together. So, where was I even going with this? So, Val was in Europe. So, basically, right after the Colorado Trail, she flew to Geneva, I think, because she did Tour du Mont Blanc with her parents. So, she was in the Dolomites hiking around the time that I was thinking about coming to Europe. So, I text her and I'm like, yo, what if I come to Europe? And she was like, yeah, let's meet up after I'm done in the Dolomites. I'm looking at flights to Rome. I'm looking just whatever's cheap, and everything's, expensive because it's Europe. It's like $600 for a one-way flight, and that's on the cheap end of things. Like, I still have to get home, keep in mind. Like, I don't have $1,200 to just like blow on a flight to Europe. So I'm like, well, like, maybe I won't go to Europe. Sounds kind of expensive. Maybe I'll just go back to Los Angeles, like go on a road trip, figure things out. Like, there were just so many different options going on in my head. And one of my childhood friends texts me and she says, hey, you should hit up our neighbor, who is the mother of one of my other childhood friends. It's a whole thing, but she has free flight benefits, and I think her and my mom are going to Europe this weekend. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I text Cheryl and I say, hey, do you want to go to Europe? She's like, when? I said, this weekend. She said, I'm already going. I'm going to Spain. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Can I come? And she literally invites me on their travel plans. She has free flight benefits, so all I have to do is pay the taxes on the flight to Europe. So she books me a direct flight to London from LAX on Thursday. So Tuesday, I fly to Los Angeles from Honolulu. I get in Wednesday morning. David picks me up from the airport at like 1 a.m, and he's in the worst fucking mood I've ever seen him in. Well, no, that's not true. I've seen him in some pretty horrible moods. I have really wanted to kill David before, i.e. the Wind River Range, when his pack got eaten by mice and he was so bitchy and hungry and rude. So I love him though. Haha, he's like a brother. Sorry, David. So he picks me up from the airport and he is just so angry, and I haven't seen him in like a month. So I'm like, you better fucking relax, David. I go back to his apartment. I spend the night, and I was going to sleep on the air mattress because this man is seriously my brother. You guys, like, I don't even know. I've hugged David maybe once or twice in my life. He's like my little brother to me. There's just zero, it's so platonic. Like, people are always like, oh my God, that man's in love with you. Like, people from social media that see us hanging out, they're like, oh, there's no way a guy would hang out with you unless he wants to fuck you. And I'm like, actually, that's not true. He has 2 older sisters, okay? He views women as human beings who can be platonic friends, right? So, picks her up at the airport, spend the night at his place, and it's like 1 a.m, and I'm super tired because I guess it was 2. I was super tired from being on a flight, like, for 6 hours, whatever, and, he turns the lights off, and the first thing he says when he turns the lights off is, I just, like, don't know if I'm ready for love. David, for fuck's sake, dude, it's 2 a.m. But I was just grateful that he wasn't angry with me. So I let him, we had a little therapy sesh at 2 a.m. and wake up, go to sleep, super late, of course, like 3 a.m. probably. And the next morning, which 3 hours later, he wakes me up to go to work for our last day of work. It's my last day of work. I have to go do my exit interview. I have to go clean out my desk. And honestly, the night before, I was so excited about going to work that I couldn't really sleep anyway. I was exhausted, and I'd only slept a couple hours a night the nights previous as well. But I was just so excited to see my coworkers. I couldn't wait to just walk into my lab and say hi to my team because I seriously adore them to the ends of the earth. So he gets me up, we go to work, and I'm so happy to be there. I think we got to the lab at 6:45, 7 in the morning, and I was floored. I got to see so many people, all my coworkers. So many people were like, haven't seen you around here in a minute. And I was like, yeah, it's actually my last day. See you later, losers. I'm out. So I have my exit interview with legal, and I also just get to spend time with my team. However, this is all on the context of I need to be in Santa Clarita that evening for my team dinner for this Lenny and Larry's thing, the Austin Alexander Lenny and Larry's competition thing. So I leave the lab at maybe 2:30. I go get my car from my coworker's house, who's been having my car at her house for months. She literally just lets me leave her car in her driveway. And I love her, again, to the ends of the earth, because all the best people I've met in my life are from freaking Hughes Research Laboratories. And I drive to Santa Clarita. I get to my hotel at 5:45. I spend all of 5 minutes in my hotel room before I drive to this dinner. The dinner's fun. I was super excited to meet everybody on my team. I haven't seen Austin in a long time, so it was cool to see him. And then that night, okay, so I have a lot of just platonic friends. I want this noted. I'm so firmly celibate, and I friend zone everybody, and I have a lot of platonic friends. Okay, so I invited my friend Justin, who I know through obstacle course racing. He runs his own performance company, basically, and he trains people for obstacle course racing, and he partners with brands and things, and he's just seriously a stand-up guy. We are very good friends, and we've hung out in platonic, he's a friend. He's just a friend. That I swear to God, he's just a friend. And I hadn't seen him in 3 months. The last time I saw him, we were getting blackout drunk in Culver City with our friend Erica, and Erica cried into my arms about some man, and there's just there's fun. He's a friend, good fun history. So I invite him to come spend the night at the hotel because I have extra space, and he's involved with OCR. So I asked Austin if he could come watch the competition. I really wanted them to meet because I thought it would be a really good partnership for those two to meet, as well as I just wanted to spend time with Justin. I just missed my friend, and I wanted to spend time with him. So he came and spent the night at the hotel I was at, and there were separate beds, and we ended up talking all night. I think we went to sleep at maybe 2:30 in the morning again. And keep in mind, I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in a night in the 3 nights before that. So I was pretty tired when I woke up the next morning. And this is Thursday that this is all happening. So it's Thursday morning, quote unquote, Wednesday night that we're staying up until 2:30 in the morning. And I had my flight to London Heathrow at 7 p.m. Thursday evening. And in between, I have the competition. I need to repack my car because when I came home from Hawaii, I threw everything into my car. Or no, when I came home from the Colorado Trail, that was the last time I'd seen my car. Colorado Trail, I had not even unpacked my bag. My backpack was still packed from the CT. So I needed to repack every single possession that I owned and get my shit together to get to Europe for a month. So I wake up at 6:30, maybe 7:30, just stressed, like palpable anxiety about what I need to get done that day. And I go repack my car, I get breakfast, and I'm just stressing because our competition didn't start until 10, and I was far away from LAX. I still needed to get my car back to Agora Hills. I needed to Uber from Agora Hills to LAX. Like, I was very concerned about the time constraints, and it turns out rightfully so. Because well, okay, before we jump to that, okay, so the competition was an obstacle course, and it was built by Mud Girl. I'm an elite Spartan racer, so I know a thing or two about obstacle courses, difficult obstacle courses. And the Lenny and Larry's team was very like hush hush about what we were going to be doing. They just told us like, oh, it's gonna be, it's gonna be very tough. You are gonna have to do a lot of teamwork. And I was like, this sounds like cap. Like, I've seen some tough shit in my day, and I just don't believe that this is gonna be hard. Everyone else on my team was like kind of freaking out because they rightfully so. If you haven't seen obstacles before, then yeah, I guess I can understand. I have a lot of experience in the arena, so I'm kind of like chill about it. Like, it'll be fine. Like, it doesn't even matter. Literally, if we lose, it doesn't matter. But if we lose, I'm gonna retire from OCR. So please, let's not lose. And my team ended up totally crushing it. I had so much fun. I haven't been on an obstacle course since I dropped out of the Utah Ultra 2.5-3 months ago, and honestly, I've been missing it. I really do miss being on obstacles. I am so bummed. I was in Hawaii. Was I in Hawaii or Europe for OCR World Championships? I was really bummed to miss that because I've never gotten to go. I only started obstacle course racing last year, and that happened to fall on the same weekend as Tahoe, which I went to. So this year I was like, oh, I'd love to go to OCRWC, but the circumstances of my life just did not allow for that. So oh my god, so Lenny and Larry's, there's a lot of shit here to talk about. I'm already at 30 minutes, so just kind of unbelievable. Whew. Let's just take a moment to breathe for a second. Okay. Let me recenter myself. Obstacle course goes great. We end up winning, which is cool. They gave me like $3,000 that I can use for quote unquote gym equipment. I'm going to use it to buy either skis or winter mountaineering gear because that is part of my future plans, which we will talk about at the end of this episode. However, I leave the competition at 2:30. I get to Agora Hills at 3:30. I call an Uber by 4:15. I don't get to LAX until 6:15 because it was rush hour and there was an extra hour of traffic. So turns out you have to be at international flights an hour early, a whole hour to check in. So I missed my flight to London Heathrow, my direct flight from LAX to London Heathrow. And I'm like, God fucking damn it. What do I do? They rebooked me because everything's on standby. They rebooked me on a flight to Chicago, and then I would fly Chicago to London the next day. However, I was the only person who didn't get on the Chicago flight through standby. And then Cheryl was like, oh, just wait till the 2 a.m. flight or whatever to Chicago. And I was like, dude, I'm not fucking waiting around for a 2 a.m. flight. I'm probably not even going to get on. So I go back to Agora Hills, and it ended up being in my favor because I got to go on my long run. I got to do a really enjoyable 18-mile run on the Backbone Trail, which is my favorite place on earth. And I also got to run 10 miles the next morning before my flight. So I got to do all of my 100-miler training before flying to Europe because I knew getting to Europe, I was probably going to be miserable. Going for my long run was going to be very difficult. It just wasn't really going to work out. So I get to London. I'm like, screwing up my timeline here. I get to London. I immediately fly to Barcelona. I'm in Barcelona for a couple days, and then I go to Madrid for a couple days. And my neighbor's mom, they go home. The two moms I was with, they go home Thursday of that week. And I had been trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my Europe trip. I didn't have any plans. I knew I was going to meet Val in Paris the next week, but I basically had an entire week with nothing that I could just fill in the gap with. And Val's pictures from Tour du Mont Blanc were just so insane, and the route is iconic. It is the UTMB race course, so I was pretty tempted to make a TMB attempt happen. And I start looking at huts to book, and everything closes, I swear to God, September 20th. I was looking to start September 24th-ish. So vast majority of the huts were closing, and they close because the weather becomes very inclement after September 20th. Like, that's the fall equinox, or is it called an equinox? I think it's equinox. No, it's definitely not solstice. Fall equinox happens. The weather in the Alps gets horrendous, which we will quickly figure out is true. So I find huts, and I'm going to do TMB over 4 days. And I didn't have exact mileage figured out for this attempt, and it was looking like it was going to be a 50K, maybe 28 miles, maybe 26 miles, and then like a shorter day. And I was like, okay, that sounds reasonable. Like, I was doing 20s on the Colorado Trail, so I would have no problem doing that. And I'm training for this 100 miler, so yeah, back to back, like 50K 20s. And that's not a problem with me. That sounds great. So in all actuality, shit just like hits the fan with this Tour du Mont Blanc attempt. First of all, I check the weather 3 days before I start, and the day that I start, it is supposed to start raining every single day for the entire, like, I think Apple weather shows you like a week in advance. The entire week was rainy and like 40s. Keep in mind, I was coming from Oahu, okay? I was coming from tropical rainforest. I was used to hot. I was used to running in 85 to 90 degrees with like 80% humidity. So this was quite a shakeup. I also did not bring appropriate gear for a fall weather Tour de Mont Blanc. I didn't have a rain jacket. I didn't have gloves. I didn't have pants. I didn't have waterproof shoes. Like, I was truly just trail runner, Cody, Chicken Joe attempting this shit, okay? So I buy a rain jacket in Chamonix to cover myself and my vest, and the guy at the gear shop is like, "You're doing what?" I'm like, "I'm gonna do TMB over 4 days." He's like, "The weather's horrendous." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but it should still be fun, right?" It was not. And I basically start the trail the next day. It's pouring. The water is running down the streets. It's atrocious. My day one vlog from the trail is already posted, so if you want to hear me cussing a lot and running a lot and eating a lot of chocolate, then that is on my YouTube channel. I'm, by the way, on my YouTube grind right now. If you cannot tell, I am very close to becoming monetized, and again, your girl's a full-time content creator, so I do need the income stream. I'm also life coaching. I've talked about this a bit on the podcast before. I'm also coaching, and I have like an almost full coaching practice, which is kind of crazy, but I would say, I would call myself a content creator, life coach on the side, hybrid athlete on the side, primarily content creating. So day one comes around, it's raining, it's just ridiculous, and if I had run that day as to plan, it would have been 35 miles, which, again, not the craziest thing I've ever heard considering what I'm used to. However, because of the way the buses worked out, I didn't get on trail until 9:30. So I'm on trail by 10, I would say. I'm running, and I'm starting on this 5,000 foot climb out of Leuche, which, like, what the fuck? And I check my email for some reason because I'm stupid. I check my email, and I have an email from my hut that I'm supposed to sleep at tonight because I had emailed them that I was probably going to be later than 6 p.m., which was when check-in was. And they said, okay, well, you need to be here by 7:30 or else it's quote unquote not possible. Which, what do you mean not possible? I don't even understand. Like, you're going to kick me out? Like, I'm going to be sleeping in the streets of Champ-et-Lac? Like, I just don't understand. So I see that and I'm like, fuck, I'm never going to make it by this time. I had 35 miles with 13,000 feet of gain on the schedule that day. That's at least a 12-hour thing. Like, straight up. That's a long day. So I am, considering my options. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to take the train to Argentière, which is 13 miles down the road. And then I should be able to make it to my hut in time. So I get back on trail by 11:30, which means I still have 20 miles left of the day. And I ended up finishing my 20 miles by 5:30. Like, I think I even made it before the OG cutoff time, like the OG check-in time, which is fun, that's great. And basically the whole day was raining, but I was in a really good mood. I was just talking to myself. I was practicing all these weird accents because I kept speaking to people in English who were French, so then they would respond with really French accents, like heavily accented English, and I was like, this is so fun. So I was practicing what little French I knew, as well as, practicing an English accent and a French accent. It was just when I was on the Colorado Trail, I was not talking to myself nearly as much as I was talking to myself on Tour du Mont Blanc. Like it was concerning, but it was also a sign that I was in a good mood and I was feeling good. When I was on the CT, I was so fatigued and I felt so horrible that I couldn't even talk to myself. Like I would sing maybe a tiny bit, but normally when I'm running and backpacking, I'm singing the whole time. I'm talking to myself. Like I don't shut up. Like I'm one of those people that could talk forever, which very fitting. You're listening to my podcast where I frequently speak for an hour about what I care about. Okay. So I'm on the Colorado Trail and no, I'm not on the Colorado Trail. I'm on Tour du Mont Blanc. I'm talking to myself. I'm having a great time. I get to the hut that night and I'm freezing because it started absolutely pouring the last 6 miles of my day. It was pretty rainy, misty most of the day, pouring at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So I come in, I'm absolutely soaked, and I'm staying the night there with probably 12 other people. I ended up sharing a room with 6 Scottish dudes, and they were fucking hilarious. I love people from the UK. They're so funny. They have such a dry sense of humor, and it makes me just cackle. Like I love dry humor. If you spend a lot of time with me, then I am a dry humor expert. I went on a date in Jackson Hole and the guy told me that he couldn't tell when I was being serious or not. And the answer is that I'm almost never being serious. I just have a very dry sense of humor. I get it from my dad. Okay. So that night I spent the night at the hut and I'm not kidding, feed me maybe 500 calories for dinner. I have some rice and some vegetables, and I left pretty hungry. I ended up eating a whole roll of cookies. I think I have very similar cookies right now. These European, they're the ones I'm holding up for people not on the YouTube are Bisson cookies, but the ones I had were the Prince cookies. So I ended up eating a whole roll of cookies and just trying to get some calories in because the next day I literally had a 50K on the books as well. So I'm doing map review that night and I realized that the next day is also supposed to be a 35-mile day, which how I got around to planning this and accidentally planning 70 miles in 2 days, I really couldn't tell you. The UTMB map fucked me. So I am shoot, well, you know what, I'm just gonna have to eat a really big meal in the morning. I'm gonna have to eat lunch in La Folie. I've got a very big climb in the middle of the day. So coming out of Champlain-Lac, which is where I slept the first night, I have a steep descent into this valley where La Folie is, and then a very long climb. It's a 12-mile climb, and you climb 5,400 feet up to Grand Col Ferret. I start my day and it's not immediately raining on me. However, I get about 4 miles in and it starts pouring and I'm like, well, this is the curse. This is the brave path I have chosen. And I run into La Folie. I end up hiding in this little village for an hour because again, it was absolutely pouring and I didn't want to get soaked and freezing before heading up to the col. I get to La Folie, I go into the Swiss restaurant and I eat a pizza, and it's my personal hell because there's an accordion player playing music in the restaurant. It was very stressful and it's pouring and freezing outside. I decide, I'm going to sit in this restaurant for 20 more minutes, and then regardless of what the weather looks like, I'm just gonna get up and go. So I wait another 20 minutes, still fucking pouring. I start going and I start on the climb up to Grand Col Ferret, which takes me a couple hours. I get up to Grand Col Ferret and it's snowing. It is snowing because keep in mind, while it has been raining and 40 in the valleys, it has been snowing up on all of the passes. So I got a little bit nervous about going up to Grand Col Ferret because I had heard from the people from the hostel the night before that there was a lot of snow, deep snow on the passes. I get up there and it's mostly all walked through. It's only the second day of raining and snowing, so nothing was too deep yet. It definitely was getting pretty muddy. Not dangerous though. I get over Gran Colfere and down into Refugio Elena. So from Refugio Elena to Refugio Monte Bianco, which is where I was sleeping that night, it was 13 miles, maybe 15 miles. And mostly flat downhill, but I only had 2 hours to do it. And I only had gummy candy in my backpack. And it wasn't looking good for me, you guys. I didn't have a headlamp. It was getting dark. It was all bad. So I get down to Refugio Elena. And there are 3 Italian men, a small child, and a dog, or I guess 2 dogs. But the dogs like run off. We literally can't find these dogs. And they see me running down the mountain and they stop me and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, you only have this little vest, like you're a girl, you're alone." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just like running TMB, but I'm getting really nervous about my time constraints. I need to be at Refugio Monte Bianco in the next 2 hours." And they were like, "Oh, well, we can take you." I'm like, and that was what I'd been hoping for when I said that. So I'm getting better at the art of manipulation, and part of that means you need to let men think that it's their idea to do something. You can go with the straightforward, like, "Could you please give me a ride?" But men in particular seem to find a lot of joy in coming up with a grand, generous idea like that themselves. So they were like, "Oh yeah, like we'll take you. That's no big deal." Like, "Oh, sweet." So they end up hitchhiking me to Refugio Monte Bianco. I get to Refugio Monte Bianco, I check in, and the guy, who's very cute at the desk, by the way, he says, "You're the only person staying here tonight." I'm like, "What? How could that even be possible? I slept with like 12 other people the night before." Okay. He's like, "Yeah, no, end of the season. It is off the trail a bit. Like, I had to climb 1,000 feet over a mile the next morning to get back on trail. So it's definitely off trail." But I was very surprised to be alone in this massive hut. And on my TikTok, I posted like a hut tour. Yeah, it was great content to be alone in that hut that night. So the next morning, I'm skipping a lot of details because I'm realizing I'm running out of time, but this is quite a story. Okay. So I come out of Refugio Monte Bianco and I start climbing, and the weather for the first time on this trail is clear. I'm actually seeing something. I haven't seen a single Alp this entire trip. No Alps were seen. Okay. I haven't had a single good view. So I wake up in Refugio Monte Bianco in front of Mont Blanc, and I'm in, Courmayeur. I'm right outside of Courmayeur, and it's sunny and it's feeling so nice outside. I'm like, "Oh my God, maybe I'll actually be able to send my A plan today," because the 2 days prior I had to fall short. I only did, 22 miles each day. So the third day I'm like, "Oh my God, maybe I'll actually get to run a full 50K today. I'm going to be able to run all the way to Les Ponts and, go over all these passes. It'll be great." I was incorrect. So I start running and, I'm on this long climb. The weather again is beautiful. And I get to Refugio, what is it? Elisabetta. So I get to Refugio Elisabetta, which is about 2 miles or so from Col de la Seine. And I make the climb up to Refugio Elisabetta, and I'm like so hungry at this point because I had a terrible breakfast at Refugio Monte Bianco, and I am running super low. I just need cappuccino. I need a cappuccino, and I need food. And I go in there, and I'm like the first person into the refuge this morning out of all of the TMB hikers. And I start finding out that it's probably not a good idea for me to continue on with my TMB attempt. So a bunch of people were coming down from the col and telling me the snow was really deep. One guy told me it was like mid shin. Another person told me it was knee deep. I also, keep in mind, I didn't have winter gear. I did not have any kind of waterproof boot or anything. I didn't have micro spikes. I didn't have pants. Okay. I was literally in shorts. I didn't have a winter jacket. I just had a base layer and a rain jacket. And there was like this freezing icy headwind. I stepped out of the refuge and was almost blown over by this frozen wind, instantly chilled to the bone. And I made the judgment call to not continue. I hiked up to the pass, another mile and a half from Refugio Elisabetta, got a visual on what was going on that side of the mountain, and there was like a huge whiteout. The entire col, which is a mountain pass, was whited out. I also checked the weather for Les Ponts, and it said that it was snowing. Like, the weather where I was going was worse. If I had been going counterclockwise, I think it would have been okay. However, the direction I was heading was not looking very positive. And the entire Tour du Mont Blanc trip was really just a lesson in being flexible. I learned that on the Colorado Trail, that you can prepare and plan as much as you want, but you're probably going to run into some unexpected problems along the way. So that was my main takeaway from my Tour du Mont Blanc attempt, as well as the Colorado Trail, was just learning how to be flexible, changing your plans, and putting your safety first, because I cannot reiterate enough, when you are alone, that is not the time to be heading into inclement weather, being ill-equipped, ill-prepared for the terrain that you're going to be in. I didn't have a GPS device to SOS if something happened. Like, literally, if I sprained an ankle up there, I would die from hypothermia. Like, that is the kind of weather we were in. And I literally went into Cormier that night, looked on the news, and some guy had died on Long's Peak in a very similar situation. And I was like, okay, I feel good that I made a good judgment call for myself and I'm safe. And I still managed to do 20 plus days, 3 days in a row on the most ridiculous terrain I've ever seen. I think I did like 6,000 feet of gain every single day. So I adequately got my training in, and I got what I needed from the experience. I don't feel any kind of like chip on my shoulder about not finishing, because I just think it's stupid to not put your safety first in a situation like that. You do not get to be selfish and put your life in danger for an ego boost. It's not the way that I roll, and it's not the way I would encourage anyone else to roll, which is funny because I don't think a lot of people who follow my content would expect that from me. I think a lot of you think that I'm just kind of like live, laugh, lovin', haha, like there's never any sound judgment or planning that goes into the things that I do, but I am a highly responsible individual, unfortunately, because I'm an oldest child. I was like a perfectionist, perfect kid, perfect student, like always very prepared. So that is the way that I approach mountain safety as well. You are not going to beat the mountain. You're just not. So I, bailed on my TMB attempt. I slept in Cormier that night. I flew to Geneva the next day to meet Val in Paris. Flew from Geneva to Paris, of course. And Val and I were in Paris together for 3 days or so. And honestly, both of us were so burned out on traveling by this point. She had been traveling around Europe for about a month by the time I was there. I was only there for two weeks, but also I had been living in a car and traveling full time since May. And so I was ready to, I guess, phone it in, like go home. I had so many things I'd been neglecting. Like, I felt bad about neglecting the podcast. I had other content I wanted to work on. I have my life coaching clients that I work with, and my energy is very important in working with them. So it's really nice but weird to be in a stable place. Here I am in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, I've never wanted to live in my hometown. I was always the kid, even early high school, even before high school. I was only looking at colleges out of state. I did not want to stay in Phoenix. This is not my place. And that was my ankle. I'm having this kind of identity crisis, which is my mom thinks I'm ridiculous, because of course my intrusive thought is, oh, I'm gonna get stuck in Phoenix, like I'm gonna be one of those people who never leaves. But I've never been the person who's ever been stuck, and that's the opposite of my problem. I have never been a person who gets stuck. Ultimately, I do want to return to California, and I have some things kind of in the progress or in the works that can make that happen. I mean, really, the only reason I'm in Arizona is because my 100-mile race is here at the end of the month anyway, so I really need to do a lot of heat training and prepare myself for the physical demands. I'm at the point of 100-miler training where I'm peaking, so this week in particular is my peak week. On Saturday, I'm running a 50K. Sunday, I'm running like 15 miles, and then I'm also mountain biking that day. Like, this is peak week. This is the time that I need to be eating well. I need to be focusing on recovery. I need to be just living a very chill life so that I can recover from the training and become a better athlete for it. So having this stability, having a real home to be in, I'm definitely grateful for, especially after being in hostels in Europe and feeling like I can't get anything done. I literally could not find a quiet space to do anything, and it was infuriating. So I'm so happy to be able to record this podcast in the quiet of even my childhood home. Moving forward, Wow, we just sat through 54 minutes of what the hell has been going on in the last month, and I feel like I'm still missing things. Like, I really didn't get to dive into my emotional state or my thoughts and feelings about a lot of things. Like, truly, this is like a catch-up session with your therapist. You know, when you haven't been to therapy in a long time, and your therapist is like, so what's going on? And you're like, here are the facts of the case that I present. And it's like, you actually don't get to do any emotional work because you are just so caught up in filling her in on the details, the discrete details of what's been going on. That is how this feels for me right now. So moving forward, I'm thinking about what I want my life to look like. I'm thinking about how I want to approach, you know, my job, I guess. Like, now that I'm full-time content and full-time life coach, I'm just feeling antsy. Like, I feel like I have too much time in my day. I'm spending too much time on my phone. I really feel like I want to do something, and I want to be able to create more community. I think that's kind of what I'm lacking. And I was almost thinking about applying to be like a lifty, or I have a friend who works in Telluride at Allred's, the really fancy restaurant at the ski resort. I'm kind of like, maybe I'll apply to do seasonal work and move somewhere really cool and get really good at skiing or snowboarding for the winter. That's on my radar. I also have this friend in Washington, Blake, who he has a 3-bedroom house, and he invited me to come stay with him for a month or so and teach me winter mountaineering skills, because David wants to climb Mount Whitney in December. So we may be doing some winter mountaineering. But when he texted me like, hey, do you want to climb Whitney? I was like, okay, yo, we do not have the skills for Whitney. We do not. Like, trust the mountain, okay? Don't try to beat the mountain. I was like, if we are going to climb Whitney in December, I want to be just absolutely rock solid with an ice axe. I want to be very comfortable with dealing with snow conditions. So Blake does all kinds of fuck shit in the outdoors. He is always doing ski mountaineering. He is always climbing peaks. He's doing some really cool stuff all the time. So Blake was super thrilled for me to be like, hey, can I come live with you and we can just go send stuff every weekend? He loved it. He's such a good teacher. I think he's really going to appreciate having me if that's where I end up. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the general gist of what's going on. I'm super happy to be back on the podcast. I love the podcast so much. It is one of my favorite kinds of content. And I just didn't really feel like I was in the right energetic space. And again, I couldn't find a quiet place to literally even record the podcast in Europe. So it's been one of those things that got pushed to the back burner. And I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the pod. I need to figure out how to monetize this. Like, I pour my heart and soul into this podcast. Like, these episodes get so vulnerable and so real. And I just feel like if this is something, like, I'm giving this content for free, and that's fine, like, that's life, but also, you know, I have to make a living. So I need to figure out whether that's going to be like host read ads, or if I want to do a Patreon with like bonus content, or even just using YouTube to monetize. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this. And I definitely want to talk about the business strategy behind being a content creator full-time, my income streams, what I'm doing. I would love to chat about that on another episode. So if you're interested in hearing about that, then that could be like a bonus episode, or just a little segment on a future episode, because I'm not sure how much stuff is going to be going on now that I'm in my fucking hometown, but we will see. And I'm about to wrap up here, but as always, I appreciate you guys so much. It's been very cute that over the last 4 weeks when the pod hasn't been posted, y'all have been like, Mac, we want the pod. Where's the pod? Give us the pod. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best. Okay. I'm just one human being. So it has been very cute, very gratifying that you guys appreciate the podcast so much, because, you know, I try my best. On a daily basis. I try to show up to this podcast authentically and give my true self and talk about real topics on here. So I'm happy that it's heard and appreciated, because I've been dealing with all kinds of hate comments on my Instagram lately. It's been absolutely killing me. The vegans are angry with me, and then my Instagram blew up like quite a bit in the last month or so, but in the last week in particular, I've gained like almost 10,000 followers. And of course, these are people who don't know me. So now my content is just being spread to the worst corners of the internet. And now I'm getting like men who are angry commenting on my deeply vulnerable posts. And I just like I can't handle it right now. I'm too sensitive for this shit. So I appreciate all of you again who are fighting the aggressive people in my comments so that I don't have to, because honestly, it's tearing away at my will to live. Like I generally would consider myself a kind person. I like to treat other beings with empathy and kindness, and this is making me less kind, and I don't like that. So I'm gonna need to do some deep thinking on how to approach this, because I can't really just quit. I can't like delete Instagram. Like, this is my full income now. Food for thought. So I will see you guys next week. I promise. I swear to God, you will have an episode next week. I'm sorry that it took so long to get this one to you. I hope that it was worth it. And next time we'll be able to dive into some deeper topics, I hope and think. But I love you all. You guys are the best. Thank you. If you enjoyed the podcast, like it or something. Actually, I don't know if you can like it. Leave a review. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel for the video podcast. I know, she's a YouTube girly now. Max J. Smith, check it out. Tell your mother I say hi and that I love her. Send this to your hottest friend. Send this to your mom. And I hope that you have an amazing day and you make some good choices. I hope you respect the mountains, and I hope you get to do some outdoor fuck shit. And I love that for you. All right. Goodbye. I love you. Mwah.